Hey, howdy, hey, my brewing brothers and sisters.
Greetings, Cretans.
That's all you folks out there. Make a little noise. We are live at BrewChatter in beautiful Sparks, Nevada, I want to say.
Yep, Sparks, Nevada.
Sparks, right next to Reno. It is like Reno's temple. It's right there. It's, tightly attached. Yes? No?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Where's temple offensive? No.
Appendage.
Appendage. It's like the dangling participle, I want to say,
Yeah.
of Reno. Beautiful area, wonderful place, and you were saying you've never been here before.
Yeah, this is my first time.
First time up in Reno.
I think
Reno area.
Yeah, I mean, we went to Tahoe many years ago
Right.
with John, our good friend.
Yes.
But we haven't really graced Reno with our presence that I know.
Right, I have both of them.
Oh, okay.
I love it up here. I love Reno. I love the people up here are fantastic. It's different than a
Got
lot
some
of other
local
places.
favorites,
Right?
do you? Yeah.
People around here are just friendly, and they also got their own don't mess with me attitude, but kind and generous is absolutely the way to describe Reno and the homebrew scene and the beer scene up here. It's fantastic. We went out to Revision Brewing last night.
Right. Yeah, that was a good time.
And just had a heck of a time. We left with cases of beer, and
Yeah.
we tasted all sorts of special stuff and sours and everything else. It was like a giant party. And,
It really was a good time. Yeah.
ton of fun.
As you're saying, some of the local people started bringing bottles out and sharing with us, and
Yeah.
met a bunch of folks. So
Yeah.
great
So
place.
maybe we'll repeat that again tonight. Who knows? I don't know where, but we'll have some fun. I also went by Shush Boom. Jason, friend of mine, he came by multiple times over the years to learn some stuff, to open his place. And he's done an amazing job building that place. I'm really impressed with just the construction alone.
Okay, well, we'll check that out too.
Yeah, I had his alt beer. I thought it was delicious.
Oh, nice. You don't get alt very often.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
I said I picked the alt because you never see them on tap anywhere, right?
Right.
But yeah, that was a lot of fun. So really great place to come and visit. If you've not been to Reno, come up to Reno, have some fun up here. They got everything, gambling to breweries to
Big hotels.
big hotels. You got Virginia City. I mentioned Virginia
Oh, yeah.
City.
Yeah.
Really cool, touristy little gold rush town, but they got historic things to look at as well. Speaking of historic things,
What aspect of history are you thinking of?
brewing history,
Oh, okay.
homebrew history. Who's really just made a major change to homebrew through their innovation?
I believe that would be our good friend John Blickman.
That's right. If you have BrewChatter, you can pick up cool things like the beer guns, the Blickman beer guns.
Yeah.
Really great guy, great bunch of folks that have created a ton of cool ways to innovate your brew day.
Yeah.
All the brew kits, the beer
Labor
guns,
saving
some of the-
equipment.
Yes,
And
making your beer day more fun, even without drinking.
that's
I
right.
don't drink during my brew day. How many people drink during the brew day? pretty much.
Everybody. Yeah.
I don't know. I couldn't. Right. Well, at least you can blame it on something, right? Well, today, like I said, we're at the lovely BrewChatter. If you're up in Reno, you got to stop by. Best homebrew shop around. Lots of great, fresh ingredients. Wonderful, gear like flicking gear here, and most importantly, the owners, Josh and RJ. Like I said, I was at Shish Boom and I was talking to one of their guys there, and they're like, I mentioned BrewChatter. They're like, oh, we love those guys. They're so kind, so nice. They called when they were closed, left a message, and they're like, an hour later, they called me back and say, hey, what do you need? So people love you out there. They're good folks. You guys like BrewChatter too, right?
Oh, yeah.
There you go. Huh? Yeah. Give it up for BrewChatter, who kindly flown John out here. I drove,
Yep.
and then put us up in a hotel and everything else. Really, first class treatment, and really, really greatly appreciated.
Yeah, it really has been an easy trip, easy flight.
Right.
And yeah, looking forward to today's show.
Fantastic.
Looking forward to hearing your questions and experiences.
You've got a sweet Blickman cap on. I had not noticed that until now.
Yeah, it keeps my ears warm.
What about the rest of your head?
It does. It works well for the bald spot too. Actually. Yeah.
There you go. That's where it's puffy in the back.
Yeah.
Really give you a little bald spot, a little room to breathe.
Yeah. I figured it's like, oh yeah, we'll be inside. I won't need my sweatshirt, and then of course the open garage door accessibility.
Hey, I need some air in here. I am a weak, delicate flower, and I need ventilation.
I would think you'd need 70 degrees Fahrenheit as well, but no, you're good.
Speaking of the logo gear, here's my latest shirt. This quickly became my favorite.
Crappy beer makes baby Jesus cry.
Nice.
Yes, that's nice.
I started wearing it around the holidays, and people would say, "Oh yeah, great Christmas shirt." I'm like, "Yeah, I guess." It doesn't mean I'm not going to wear it year round. Yeah, crappy beer makes baby Jesus cry, that's fact. It's just stating a fact.
Yeah, I believe it.
What other facts we can say? Today, our thought was we just get some questions from all you folks. So prepare your questions. Be ready.
Yeah,
And then,
and the size of the crowd here today, Jamil. I mean, look at the thousands of people that crammed into the shop.
I don't think it's more than 5,000, but I do think it's probably
huge.
It's closing in.
Tremendous.
It's closing in on that. It is a huge crowd. Not to say you're all huge.
But you are
there's many
tremendous.
of you. Yes. So let's do this. Let's take a short little break. When we come back, we'll have your questions live after this. All right, we're back. We're live here at BrewChatter in lovely Sparks, Nevada, where there's tons of breweries around. So if you come out here, not only do they have their little bar where they've got 5-6 beers on, and they're always, you just get any one of them. They're all delicious. I'm having the Sierra Nevada Powder Day. There you go.
Okay.
Beer, delicious. And you're having the Alibi Porter.
Yeah, I was wanting more of a porter mood this morning. Well, I'm telling myself this resembles coffee. So.
Yeah. All right. Let's kick it off. Who has a question here in the crowd? Come on. All right. Step right up. What's your name? Mike. All right.
So I've been struggling with top aroma and with my IPAs. So I was just wondering, you guys, what's your method? How do you achieve that? I mean, you guys were just at Revision. They have some of the best hop aromas on the IPAs in the world, I would argue. So what's the secret?
I like to get my nose right down into the cup. Then I get lots of hop on that one. But
there's a few tricks to it, and one of them is layering in different hops. So you want to pick stuff that you've got various hop compounds. The single hop thing works well if your malt bill is really low. The bigger your malt bill, the more character malt you put in there, crystal and stuff like that, the harder it is to get that aroma out and the flavor. It really does tamp those things down. So try and make a lighter beer, just all base malt. Some of those really poppin' beers, it's all just base malt and a bit of dextrose, and then that really lets the hop shine. Make sure that your finishing pH is correct, your water is correct for what you want to do. All those things add a little bit to it as well, but the main thing is that, and then picking a yeast that will expresses more hop aroma, that helps. And then what else?
Well,
Well, I guess to follow up with that, it's like in terms of the dry hopping and
Yeah.
you know your techniques for when you actually dry hop or how much you're looking to dry hop for something like a revision IPA that has that nose that's so amazing to me. I've always been trying to replicate that and unable to.
Couple of things that help. One is, you know, in your whirlpool, all the hops that you're throwing in the kettle and all that, you know, first word and all that stuff, that doesn't do anything.
Right.
You can just skip all that, and you go just whirlpool, and you can get a surprising amount of bittering from a whirlpool. Just whirlpool, and you can take that whirlpool temperature down to maybe like 175 Fahrenheit, and you'll get a considerable bit more aromatic and flavor out of that. And then on the dry hop, what we've been doing at Heretic is we'll actually we'll wait until fermentation's over because we need to harvest the yeast. But then we'll throw the dry hops in, and we will pump the tank around. We will circulate the tank for about 3 hours, a little less than 3 hours. You don't want to do more than 3 or 4 hours. And that really extracts the maximum from the dry hopping, and then you can get rid of the dry hops. We let it settle overnight, and then we dump them. You don't need any longer than that for dry hopping.
With the recirculation.
Yeah.
Agitation, you just swirl your fermenter, your keg.
That's what I used to do, home brewing, and I didn't know, why I was doing it, but I thought, we kind of stir the hops up into suspension, I'd get more out of them. So I'd dry hop in like a carboy, and then I got this technique of rocking it, and I could swirl everything up into the column. Beers I wanted to attenuate a bit more, I'd swirl the yeast up that same way.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to pump it around necessarily if you're doing carboys or buckets or something like that. But if you're big ass fermenters, 120 barrel fermenters, you need to pump it.
Well, I actually have a liquid riptide, so I can probably.
There you go. Nice. All right. So,
thank you. Yeah.
You ever drink cocktails?
Yeah.
All right. Your prize for being the first person bold enough to step up and ask you a good question is a 4-pack, mixed pack of some Heretic cocktails.
All right. Well, thank you, sir.
Yeah. There you go. See, the rest of you shouldn't be so shy. You would have won.
A question about doing the cocktails.
Yes.
So when you do those, do you do the like a base whiskey, vodka, gin to that and add juice when you're canning those, or do you actually do the full distillate and just distill it with all those flavors and then can right from distilling?
A good question about how the process of making ready to drink cocktails in cans. If it's like all the flavors go in, then you distill it, or you distill and then add the flavors. It's the latter. You distill and then add the flavors, because the distillation process, it depends on what you're doing. Because you will get some of the character of the things you throw in to distill. So when they do stuff like apple pie or something like that, a lot of times they'll add the apples or the apple juice, and then they'll distill that with the corn or whatever to get some of that flavor in there. But the way that we're doing these cocktails is they're made like traditional cocktails. So you make the spirit first, and then just like a bartender would, we'll assemble, whatever it is for a lemon drop, the sugar, the lemon juice, all that stuff. And we'll do all that in a tank, a large tank. We'll carbonate it if need be, and then we'll go ahead and transfer it out and package it up. So it takes about 3 days to make a tank full of cocktails and package it. Beer takes 3.5 weeks.
Yeah.
So there's a huge time and labor savings with cocktails. If you're opening a brewery, consider open a distillery instead, or distillery and a brewery. But the margins are much higher on cocktails. The labor is far less, and it's a great thing. The industry right now, beer's suffering. Craft brewers are suffering right now. There's some downward pressure on the market. There's pricing pressure. The cost of everything is skyrocketing. So it's a real struggle. But with the cocktails, you save a ton of labor, and you have a longer shelf life, and your time to produce is much less.
Interesting.
Do you actually make the spirits at the Heretic, or do you?
Yeah. So, we do both. So we'll make spirits that we'll use for our flavored vodkas. We'll make spirits for our whiskeys, from our beer. We put in barrels, all that stuff. When we do the majority of vodka-based cocktails, we'll just buy the vodka. So we found a really good supplier, high quality stuff, and it's just vastly cheaper to have somebody big produce it for you than we have 170 gallons still. We can run about 150 gallons out of it at a time. And so, it takes quite a while, and you get not a whole lot. So for bottled spirits, it makes sense, but for
packaging
cocktails,
run,
yeah,
need more.
good question. All right. I would give you a choice of beers. There's Worry. That's a 2-year-old Chardonnay barrel-aged Belgian Golden. The juicier now, which you mentioned, really enjoying. The Caramel Macchiato, which is like a caramel macchiato at Starbucks, except it's beer. And our shallow grade award-winning porter. Please choose. Oh, wise man took the $10 a can Worry.
Nice.
It is delicious. All right. Good question, man. And I'm sorry, what was your name?
Chris.
Chris. All right. Mike and Chris helping the show succeed. Do you have a question from our listeners?
Yes, I do.
And if you want to have us answer questions, you can always come to an event like this at Lovely BrewChatter, or you can email them into brewstrong@thebrewingnetwork.com.
Yeah. I'm not sure if we ever answered this one before, but it was towards the top of the list, so I'll give it a shot. Mike asks, I have 2 questions regarding considering cooling the beer, specifically Vienna lager, after diacetyl arrest. I know that cooling too rapidly can cause the yeast to express heat shock proteins, lowering the quality of the beer.
Somebody who clearly read the yeast book.
Yeah. Currently, my routine is cooling the beer to a rate of about 0.7 C every 12 hours. It's about 1.5 degrees towards 2 degrees.
Yeah. That's fine.
Then I lager my beer for a few weeks, and then often I reuse the yeast. Is that cooling rate safe? Yeah.
Yes.
If I rack my beer first, or at some time during cooling to separate it from the yeast sediment, can I cool the beer more rapidly? What rate would not jeopardize beer quality?
So at Heretic, what we do, and what I did as home brewer, was I would go like a couple degrees a day, whatever. It just depended how much of a hurry I was in. But at Heretic, we'll do 3 degrees in the morning. Morning guy comes in, reduces temp by 3 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yep.
And then at the end of the day, reduces by 3 degrees Fahrenheit on the settings.
Okay.
And that way, we're doing about 6 degrees Fahrenheit per day. It's about 3 C.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. You end up with a real clean lager that way.
Yeah.
You just don't want to go too fast, because what it does is there's some precursors of esters that the yeast are still kind of working through.
Yeah.
And they'll have internally, and then if you crash chill it, they will express that as they rapidly go towards survival mode.
Yeah. Makes
So you
sense.
take it slow and easy.
Yeah.
The same thing happens when you're trying to make starters and make healthy yeast. That temperature drop actually helps in that case. Makes them bundle up their glycogen reserves. And
Oh, yeah.
so there's a point at the starter where if you're trying to grow yeast, like the commercial yeast growers do, there's a certain point in fermentation where they crash chill it, and it causes the yeast to kind of bundle up.
Yeah.
And then they have their temperatures. They got all their own thing. Yeah.
A lot of the, I know that we throw out a lot of numbers, and generally we're trying to be conservative. We're trying to kind of put a best practice out there,
Yeah.
a guideline. 3 degrees every 12 hours. Yeah, that's really safe.
That's
You
fine.
could probably go higher. And really, we also overgeneralize about yeast itself. Like this is a number that works for all yeast, when there really is a lot of individual character to different strains.
Yeah.
And so I think even if you had doubled these cooling rates, you'd probably still be fine. Again, it can depend on which yeast strains you're using, how healthy that fermentation was to begin with, and a number of factors.
Right.
So, I guess the point I'm trying to make is,
What's the point you're trying to make, John?
we're not spouting gospel, we're spouting guidelines.
I don't know about you, but I'm spouting gospel.
You are the Pope.
I am known as the Pope.
Yes, that's true. All right. Just wanted
I've got a trivia question for everybody. What is John Palmer's nickname? I'm called the Pope. Mike McDowell is called Tasty. What is John Palmer's nickname?
Say it public.
Yes, you can say it in public. As known on the Brewing Network. Oh, come on. Somebody's got to know it.
got some young folks here.
I don't know. No? Oh, I don't know. Prince of Porter, you certainly can, and y'all remember Tasty. Tasty. Y'all can pull out your phone and Google it. I don't care. It's John Palmer's nickname. All right. Let's see here. Let's take another quick short break.
Okay.
And when we come back, we'll have more of your questions right after this. All right, we're back. We're down here in the beautiful BrewChatter land.
Yep. Sparks, Nevada, home of bighorn sheep, caribou, and penguins.
Penguins? Yes, I think that sounds correct. That sounds accurate to me. All right, another question from the assembled multitudes. Yes.
Can you explain your process for yeast harvesting in a
Sure.
commercial environment as well as a home environment?
Yes.
That's a great question.
I got time for a full show. No problem. What's your name?
Chris,
Chris. Good question. So home brewing, what I did was I'd wait for the yeast to flocculate. You can see it through a carboy. The yeast, the beer's cloudy, and then starts to clear, and that yeast falls to the bottom. If you harvest too soon, you're getting the most flocculent yeast that, the yeast that dropped out first, and they don't attenuate as much. So you want to catch some of those later yeasts. You don't want to get all those later yeasts because some of them stayed in suspension too long, petite mutants and things like that could
Less flocculent.
less flocking. You end up selecting for really a haze producing yeast. So I would wait for it to settle out. I would transfer the beer to a corny keg for carbonation. And then I'd shake the carboy up, the last little bit of liquid that's in there. You take out pretty much all the beer. It's impossible to get all of it out. There's always enough to shake up the yeast. If not, you can take, sterile water, that's been boiled and cooled, and pour that in there if you need, and then use that to shake it around and break up the yeast. And then I'd transfer it all into like liter size or 2 liter size, what I call Nalgene polypropylene containers that are sterile. Pour it into there, shake it up really well, add some water, shake it up really well. And then what you see fairly quickly is the Brunhof, the brown little chunks and dead yeast and all that will fall on the bottom and form a little dark layer down there. And then up at the top, you'll see kind of a really light, creamy color layer that's a lot of, dead yeast hulls and things like that.
Yeah.
So Once I got that to separate out, I would decant off the top, throw that away. Then I would transfer the nice, creamy, suspended
yeah.
yeast layer in the middle, pour that to another container, and then throw away what's at the bottom. So by doing that, I've separated out the dead crap on the bottom and the
floaty stuff on top.
floaty stuff on top. It just kept the good stuff because there's way more yeast than you need. So don't be afraid to decant off and clean that up. And you can do that multiple times if you want. Just use regular tap water. You want some minerals in there. No chlorine. You boil it or you can can it to get yourself some sterile water, and then that. In the professional arena, commercially, what we do is we just transfer, in our scenario at Heretic, we transfer tank to tank through we sterilize the loop with hot water, and then or pasteurize a loop with hot water, and then we open up from one tank, we transfer over. So we'll do a similar thing where we'll drop the initial stuff out of the tank because it's got a whole lot of dead stuff that dies quickly. And you want that middle cut. So the cone will fill up. And the top is the least flocculent. A lot of really bad stuff is on the bottom. So you want to get out of the middle. If you transfer too fast, if you pull too fast, you'll pull through and you'll just get a tunneling effect of the beer through the center of that yeast mass. You won't really get what you want. So you need to transfer slow enough for that. Pull off the bottom, dump it. We have flow meters that count the amount, and we also have a lab. We test the concentration of the yeast, cells per mil. Then we know how many mils we need to pump through the flow meter, and that's how we pitch. A lot of breweries, they will harvest the yeast off of their tanks and hold it in a separate tank, yeast brig, that's on load cells, and then they'll pitch by weight. They have new modern products that will count the amount of cells for you and viability for you as it pumps through, and you punch in essentially how much yeast you want, how much live yeast you want for that. But we don't have one of those. Like I said, we just use a flow meter because those things are expensive. Terribly cheap, and it's kind of the way it goes. Good question, Chris.
Well, I had one additional piece to that. So
Oh,
I'm using a
a two-parter. Yes.
Yeah, a conical.
Yes.
A homebrew conical. And I've been reading about this harvesting, and they talk about the word washing, and I don't understand the washing. Is that what you're talking about, adding clean water?
Right. So there's yeast washing and there's yeast rinsing. The old washing thing was you would add enough acid to kill off the bacteria, but not quite kill the yeast, because yeast can withstand a lower pH than the bacteria can. And so that was washing. You take your yeast, you add the acid, all that stuff. Assuming you had you plated it out, you found contaminants to it, you do that. I don't recommend doing that. If there's contamination of that yeast, or you're worried about there's contamination of that yeast, I would just throw that pitch away and get yourself a new pitch. It's not worth doing that because you're risking, contaminating future batches. That's not worth holding on to. Rinsing is just adding sterile water, shaking it up, and letting the natural, weight differences on the yeast pop it to the top and pop to the bottom. That's rinsing. And it's super easy to do, if you're already harvesting yeast and, making clean containers. It's a good way to go.
It's kind of like an Oreo cookie. You want the stuff in the middle.
Yes, you want the creamy middle. You don't want the cookie on the bottom or the cookie on the top.
Perfect.
Good point.
Thank you.
All right, Chris. You are a winner. What would you like?
Well, most of
the
the people
beers?
over here know who I am, and I don't like hop steps.
Right, and then there you go. All right.
Do you guys ever just do direct pitch, like when you're brewing, just track off of one and direct pitch from the next one to the other?
Cone to cone.
Yes. Yeah. So
That's what I know.
we do cone to cone at Heretic. We measure it, but it's still cone to cone. Like I said, you can put in extra tanks and, collect the yeast and then pitch off of weight out of that slurry in the tank. That's what a lot of breweries do as well. There's other methods, but generally we like to do, cone to cone. It's cheaper, it's more effective. Exactly. Yeah. What's your thoughts on that? Huh?
How many generations do you use on that?
Oh, generations of yeast. Yeah. So generally we want to kind of hold it into 10 to 15 generations. We've gone into the 20s, and then breweries go into the hundreds. And the yeast kind of drifts along with what they do. But we like what the yeast companies give us, and so we tend not to go more than 10 to 15. So the thing is, it's not just 10 to 15 batches. It's, because we'll have a pitch of yeast off of a tank. That first pitch, or that we'll start up a new pitch of yeast. It generates, 4 to 5 times more yeast than you put in. So from that, we could pitch, another 3 or 4 other batches. Generally, you're throwing some away. You get 2 to 3 batches that you could disseminate it out to. That's only one generation, but you've got 2 to 3 batches. And it's like, the old shampoo commercial or whatever it was. Friends, get 2 friends, whatever. So from those, you can do the same thing again. And so you can do, hundreds of batches within 10 to 15 generations. So that's what drives the price up, because a pitch of yeast, we're talking $1,500, $1,600 for a pitch of yeast. And so we have to, kind of parse that out, spread that pain out across, as many batches as we can. And so that drives it down to where we're, not, paying more than, $20, $30 a batch or so. Really helps, lower the cost.
The beers get better and better, acting like the work starts.
Yeah, definitely.
Work faster.
Yeah.
If you see a spot where the yeast will, that yeast cake will start to go, you could see it starting to get tired.
Yeah, I mean, what you see is, so one of the things that we do is we'll measure, pH and the gravity, each day, and they will form a curve for every beer, every yeast, every beer that is really consistent. Every time you brew it, those numbers should be pretty much exactly what they were before. Every time you do it. And if you see it start to trend a different way, it's like it's taking a lot longer to get to drop or change pH. It's taking longer to get to those terminal numbers. Then that pitch you have a problem with that pitch. Maybe you collected the yeast too early and you're reusing too much of the early stuff versus the later stuff. So it's kind of in there. I forget what your original question.
It's just on
Yeah, how do you know when it's starting?
Right. How do you know how many? Right. So when I was homebrewing, I mean, I could see a huge difference around, generation 3, where, really just everything fermented perfectly, gravities were right, everything, and the flavor was right. So I always like generation 3, 4, and 5 the most.
Yeah, I think I got one up to 6.
Right.
Last year, I ran one up to 6.
And homebrewing, the problem is it's hard to do, sanitary transfers, so you end up getting some exposure. So you really don't want to go too deep into that when you're homebrewing. If you have all closed transfers, everything you do brewing is closed, and then you can do it, commercially. That's why you can take it further. And then nutrients, a lot of different things. It's easier to pitch, it's all proportional, but still, it's a giant cone of yeast. It's easier to kind of select that perfect center commercially. So, yeah, that's, what we do.
That's good. Yeah. I just like hearing how y'all do this. It's good details.
Right. And, we learned a lot over the years, about the best methods of doing things. And that's one of the great things about commercial brewing is you can repeat experiments and techniques, and you can make tweaks to them because you're seeing the results, almost daily. And you're brewing every day. You see results every day. So we're able to do tests of, okay, I want to do this. I want to try this nutrient. I want to change this measurement. When you're home brewing, it's hard to have that many iterations of a beer. It takes a lot. So, commercial brewing, that's one of the things I really loved about it is I'd be like, all right, we're going to make this change. We're going to try this, see what happens. And, for some of the beers, like we make, a huge amount of Make America Juicy again. So if we did like a 30-barrel batch and tried a new technique or a new hop or whatever, and it wasn't exactly the same as the 120-barrel batch, well, we could just blend it in. I mean, any changes pretty much disappear. If it's evident, it's like a quarter of that. The changes we did, were generally for the better. And we, like, oh yeah, that's nice. All right, we blend that in, and then let's start shifting to doing that, on future batches.
Yeah, well, I know you'd said that with the juicier now that you worked quite a while stabilizing the haze. What were some of the practices that you were able to implement to help do that?
Right. So a number of things. Getting something that is hazy all the time it's water. It's the right amount of, oats and wheat. You can do too much, and that fights you and it starts making the beer more clear again.
Yeah.
It almost acts like finings.
Yeah.
So you don't want to do too much. You don't want to do too little. So it's really those grains. It's the water. It's also doing the whirlpool and recirculating the dry hop. Does a much better job of building those protein tannin complexes.
Okay.
That are permanent haze. So you get the right amount of hops, right amount of grains. You recirculate the whole thing, stir it all up, and then the water, the pH makes a difference.
Okay.
And you can get something really tremendously. Somebody sent in a question about that and asked for a show about how to make, the best NEPAs. And we should do it.
Yeah.
Get all my details and numbers down, and we can get very specific advice on how to do it.
Okay. So when you said the water just now, is that in regard to the water chemistry or the water to grist ratio?
Water chemistry.
Okay.
So the right mineral content, getting the right pH. A lot of it gives that softness. Adding salt. I mean, we really don't add salt to any beer but the hazies. So, regular old table salt.
Yeah.
What would be the right pH to get something to stay hazy?
Somebody did a study recently about pH and haze, maximum haze. And what was it? The lower it was, the more hazy it was, or the higher it was?
I think
It's all in the 4 range.
Yeah.
You want it acidic. You want it pretty acidic.
Yes. I ended up reading it, and I was just like, well, yeah, it's really not. It didn't make much sense to me. It's kind of like, okay, you want to be in that standard beer range of,
4 to 5.
around, 4, as low as 4.2, as high as 4.7. You want to kind of be in the middle, like 4.4.
Our water is like less than 7.8.
Right.
It's pretty.
You have to add, some adjustments to the water. You want to get your pH generally down
Beer
around
pH.
5. Your mash pH like 5.2 to 5.3. At the end of the mash, the end of the boil, you want to be around 5. Fermentation should take you down into the lower 4s. To get good proper fermentation. Dry hopping will drive it back up. And then if you need, you can always add a little bit more acid to kind of bring it back down.
Yep.
All right.
Since you're on the pH question train, I don't use it. I always adjust it using minerals, but it's 5 to
Yeah, 5.2. They got that stuff, and I
something.
so yeah, throw it on some.
Right. The 5.2, we're not huge fans of that.
Right.
Because it just depends on, so many things. John can speak more to the 5.2, but
I don't recommend 5.2 because it's too much of a Band-Aid. Well, a cure-all when
it works.
Yeah, it works, but you often have to add a lot of it. And if you take the time to understand what the water is, what the mineral composition of your brewing water is, and where it should go, then you can do the specific mineral adjustments to get you there rather than relying on a lot more of this Band-Aid. So yeah, it's I don't know, kind of a blunt instrument approach to a problem that deserves more finesse. Yes.
It's on the same point, but not a situated malt or pH.
Acidulated malt is, in case people couldn't hear on the microphone, he was asking, well, what's your name?
Yeah.
Dan's asking about acidulated malt for adjusting your pH.
Yeah.
What do you
Acidulated malt's good. 1% in the grain bill for about a 1/10 pH drop. So yeah, if you mash, base malt typically mashes in at around 5.8. Then you add in your water factors, you may get down to 5.6, or you may bump up to 5.9 or 6, depending on where you are. Acidulated malt will help that drop a couple tenths. Essentially, it's base malt with lactic acid coating.
Right.
So it works. It's a good natural tasting acid at 1.5%, even 7%. It's not really going to affect the flavor of your beer.
Well, the whole reason for acidulated malt is for the Germans, for the Reinheitsgebot, right?
Right.
They couldn't add lactic acid. But if they had malt that had lactic acid on it from, a
Production.
mashing process, then they were allowed to add that. So a lot of times it's easier just to use liquid lactic acid. It's the same thing. And then you're not messing with trying to adjust your total grist ratio and getting the right amount of grist in there. And then if you didn't hit the right mash pH, you don't want to throw in a bunch more grist trying to drive it down.
Yeah.
So that's why I kind of preferred the lactic acid. We on the commercial level, a lot of people use phosphoric. It's stronger. It's more
Flavor neutral.
and it's got more acidifying power. And so you use something that's 85% phosphoric, and it takes very little, and there's very little flavor difference. But lactic is a great option. Yeah. Good question. Did you want a beer, Dan?
Sure.
Do you see it now? There you go. All right. You guys are such a lively crowd. You make
There's 5,000 of us.
you make so much noise. It really is great. I appreciate everybody coming down and supporting our great sponsor, BrewChatter.
It's nice to know that people actually listen to the show, and
Right.
hear what we're doing.
I've always not believed that. I always thought there was actually no listeners, that they were not really posting these on the internet, and that we were just fooling ourselves.
Yeah, that's what my children tell me.
Right? Dad, you're fooling yourself.
Yeah.
Oh, we got another question.
Homebrew is yours silver carbonate or something undercarbonate. How do you kind of reduce carbonic acid effect on your beers over carbonate? Is there a way?
I don't think carbonic acid is an issue. Overcarbonating your beer.
It does play a role in the overall impression of the beer,
Higher carbonation,
Right.
yeah.
but it's not as acidic as some of the other things we're talking about.
Right. Yeah, taking your beer to a carbonation of say 2 volumes or
Or
3
even
volumes,
4 volumes.
yeah, you're going to get like 0.05 difference in pH. It's half of a tenth. So carbonated versus uncarbonated when you check measuring pH. So yeah, I don't. Yeah, carbonic acid in itself is not going to contribute much flavor, but the effect of carbonation on your beer, especially in competition, can be significant. And usually it's a case of undercarbonation coming in,
Right.
where you're tasting a beer and it just feels flabby, and it's like you're right on the score sheet. If you just had more carbonation, I think this would have been livelier, would have scored better.
Right.
Rarely when we get an overcarbonated beer into competition, are we going to let that bring the beer down?
Oh, but I'll tell you this: a lot of judges who don't know anything about judging beer,
Yeah.
when they see something that's overcarbonated, they assume it's infected.
Right. Yeah.
So that may or may not be the case. Most of the time, when you get a gusher on the table,
Yeah.
it's got some sort of problem. But you can overcarbonate something too and have it be clean and clear. But
Yeah.
there's people that in their mind it's infected, so that can be dangerous in competition as
That
well.
can. Yeah. I know better. You know better.
The two of us know better. Right. That's a good question. I'm sorry, what was your name?
Brent.
Brent? One last beer here for you.
Thank you.
Enjoy. It's our shallow grave porter. All right. Let's see here. I think it's time for one last break.
Okay. Sounds good.
Oh, I don't have all my little tricks to do here.
Okay.
My little timers and notes and all that stuff. So I'm just going off of my mental
clock.
acuity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it's called, right? So we'll take another short break, and when we come back, we'll have more of your questions right after this.
I got a question for you.
All right, we're back.
I'm just gonna ask, who came up with the robust porter, the black widow?
On the Black Widow, the robust porter.
Yeah.
So
Who's is that? John's or is that yours?
No, that's Jamil's. Yeah.
yeah,
That's Jamil's?
that's, all the recipes in the book are mine, with the exception of something from like Tasty, something with Mike Riddle. I have a few in there. Steve Christian.
Yeah.
There's a few in
ice
there
box
identified.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the Black Widow Porter, really, that's my recipe, but the foundation of it was from our good friends at More Beer down in the Bay Area, California. I went in and I had been brewing, chocolate hazelnut porter and a couple other things. And I was using I think I started off a kit or something like that. And I wanted to make my own porter. I was really getting into porters. I loved Black Butte Porter from Deschutes. I thought it was fantastic. And so I went in and Chris Graham there, I was like, hey, I want, an all grain, there was extract and specialty grain. So I said, I want to do an all grain porter, robust porter. And he was like, let me take you to Regan Dillon, who worked there for a long time.
Designed a lot of their.
I assume he's still alive. I don't know. He could be. But he really was into porters. And off the top of his head, he rattled off a porter recipe that was mainly like baseball and a couple, 2 or 3 crystals and, some Munich and some other stuff. And that was the recipe that I started with, all grain. And then I made some tweaks to it and adjusted it and kind of dialed it in for what became the Black Widow Porter. And the Black Widow Porter, I remember I went out to brew, and man, there were Black Widows like coming out of the hoses or thing. It was that's why it's called Black Widow Porter. Yeah, that and then the beer that Brent just got, the Shallow Grape Porter, is essentially that recipe but simplified for commercial brewing. So commercial brewing, storing like a ton of different, specialty malts and, measuring them out in, weird portions. It's like I changed it to like 1 crystal malt, everything in sacks. You either do a full sack or a half sack. That's how commercial brewers work. They don't tend to, unless it's something maybe like, roasted barley or something like that, you'll weigh it out in weird portions and not do a full sack. But anything else, you want to do it in full sacks or half sacks because it's just such a nightmare to store all these little partial sacks of malt. Yeah. So
the only complaint I have about that recipe,
yeah,
my keg goes empty so goddamn fast.
It really will cause a hole in the keg. I think that's the
you start with
problem.
5 gallons and that goes too quick. So then I go to 10 gallons and that goes quicker. How's that happen? It just goes.
There you go.
I mean, that's definitely, especially this time of year.
I've seen that happen.
It's a great beer to have right now this time of year. Especially up here.
How many people here have brewed something from Brewing Plastic Styles?
Oh,
nice.
Well, see, not everybody. Not everybody.
Some people.
So many people are pikers.
for the most, and Dr. Homebrew, I've done a couple of his out of his book too.
Nice.
I like them. You guys got great recipes. I mean, you can't go wrong.
Right. I think one of the advantages is it's a single source of recipes. So you know that if you need to make certain changes to fit your desire on one type of beer, those changes probably apply to all those different recipes.
Exactly. I've done some changes with the red and some others. I mean, red's kind of fallen out of favor, but that's still one of my favorite beers.
Oh yeah, me too.
And every time I can't tell my kid anymore that I've got a red because son of a bitch will come over and drink my keg. So,
there you go.
And then they won't come over for a couple months. So I just like to get another one. So.
Right. Yeah, it's nice to have something that's consistent that you can kind of riff off of from there. That's one of the reasons I think that really proud of the Brewing Plastic Styles we did.
Yeah.
And the guys got me doing the Weizenbach too for Halloween, I think.
Oh yeah, that's a great one. That's a great Halloween beer.
Oh, I almost brought some down for you,
Nice.
but I'm only down to 1 or 2 glasses left, so sorry you're out of luck.
Can't pour it down the sewer of John and I.
Well, if I would have had more, I
Oh,
would have.
waste.
But I do have a double also.
Nice.
I've got it from there right now. Actually, it's been kegs, and I like to let it sit for about 3-4 months before I drink it. And that, oh God, your guys' recipe on that is so damn good.
All right. I got a question for y'all. How many people have been brewing less than a year? Raise your hand. How many people less than 2 years? Less than 3? Less than 5? Less than 10?
Just barely.
Less than 15?
I'm right around there. Going.
Anybody 20 years? Who's brewed more than 20 years? Wow. 30 years. Really? You're not that old. Don't be lying to me.
I remember being a little kid and reading his book with a highlighter.
How long have you been brewing?
30 years in this year.
Wow. That's amazing.
The war kind of got me.
Right. I've how long have I been brewing?
Yeah, 30, something like that.
I have?
Mhm.
Damn, that's a long time.
Yeah, we both started like, what, just around right 1990, 88.
No, I think I was like 10 years later.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think I started, I really don't have a whole lot of idea, but my wife may know. But I think it was around 99,
Oh, okay.
1999.
Okay. That's about 10
Our
years.
wives
before.
always know, don't they?
Yeah. No, I think when we first met, you had already
Published.
had you self-published How to Brew by that
Okay.
time.
Yeah,
Because we met at MCAB in Berkeley.
right.
And I already knew. I was already a little like, oh, John, you're so special. Let me sit next to you.
Well,
Yeah.
that's why we're here, because both of you are here.
There you go.
Yeah,
Struck up a friendship back then, and
yeah. That the
it's
Berkeley.
never really become anything. But
Yeah.
Being a Berkeley, that kind of, I don't know.
Oh, there's quite the group there that weekend. I mean, our friend Dave Sapsis.
Dave Sapsis,
There was
genius of.
yeah. Shoot, now of course his name escapes me, but
I think John Toll may have been there too.
yeah, he was there.
Yeah.
And
Fritz Maytag,
Fritz was there. Talked with him.
Ray
And,
Daniels, and George Fix. Was
George
there.
Fix. That's what I was trying to think of. Yeah, George.
First time I
was there.
met George Fix.
Yeah. And some of the original BJCP members were there. Yeah. Well, I'm terrible with names.
Oh yeah. The guy who used to do the
Scott.
the barley wine festival in San Francisco. His name was
Josh.
good. You guys are terrible at names. I don't feel that bad now.
Did
Yeah.
you guys both go to Davis, to the Davis Brew School?
Now,
No.
you went to MIT or where did you?
Now I went to Michigan Tech.
Michigan Tech. I went to UCA, but I did not study beer there. Studied microbiology and writing.
Oh, beer stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Davis is a great school. And there's something about just being there that makes you end up making beer. Any other questions before they wrap this up? Right.
In Reno, we always had the Strange Brew Fest. It's been like 3 years since we had it.
Strange
Oh,
Brew
yes.
Fest. Yes.
3 years, Strange Brew was like marshmallows and limes, but now,
Marshmallows and lime in the same beer?
yeah.
Yeah.
But what
Nice.
would be your guys' Strange Brew that you would want to make the serve to the public?
Hey, that was my question.
Oh, wow. That's a good
What
question.
do you do? Oysters? What am
Hey,
I?
I have one going into it.
I tell you, just recently, I brewed a beer with persimmon. I don't think ever eaten a persimmon before. And the friend of mine, Tony, he owns a brewery or a pub. He had a bunch of persimmons and he brought some over, and man, just took my knife out, sliced them up, and just absolutely delicious. Who's eating a persimmon?
They're better frozen.
I don't even know what that is.
Right. A lot of people don't eat persimmon because you hear bad things about them. But I tell you, when they're fully ripe, they're sweet and delicious, and it's very, very fruity. I've heard bad things about the crunchy kind.
Very fermented too.
Oh, yeah, super cool. So with the fine, like flavors of something like a persimmon,
Yeah.
how would you retain that?
Right. That's a good question, because we have that same question. Because when you taste a persimmon, at least the persimmons I tasted, it was very fruity. There was a bit of apricot in there, a bit of grape, a bit of apple, and
Melon.
melon. Yeah, just kind of general fruitiness, and it seemed really delicate. So the thing we thought would be an appropriate base beer was American wheat. Not a lot of flavor, but good carrier for that kind of thing. We also figured it would turn out hazy using persimmons. And so that's why we're just like, well, if you call it American wheat, it doesn't matter whether it's clear or hazy, it'll be fine. We didn't have to worry about it. So the persimmons, we found a local cider maker that was willing to press a bunch of the persimmons into juice. And Tony, went around, and the first guy, I guess, let him down, and he trucked him over to another guy, and he really did a lot of work on making that happen. It's really cool.
Nice.
So in that kind of light, character, we looked at that also. And we thought, well, you could add in some other flavors to kind of enhance and complement that. And so if you did, maybe you add some peach extract or some peach puree, maybe you add a little bit of, apple juice or something, just to kind of enhance and lift that. You don't want to disrespect the persimmon flavor, but just a little bit of extra fruit to kind of elevate it a little bit.
So you're basically using that to kind of boost your flavor.
Yeah. Right.
And use a different hop that's done that too.
You could use different hops. You could do that too. I mean, we really went minimal on the hops on that because we didn't want to overwhelm the persimmons. We wanted the persimmon to be the forefront of that. The same thing on, other beers. In the past, we've talked about like peaches, how hard it is to get peach flavor into a beer without using extract. This is a delicate flavor. One thing is to let the peaches ripen as much as possible and then use them. But the other thing is to add a little bit of apricot in there, because the apricots taste like peaches, really kind of enhance it, and apricots are much bolder flavors. And so, you do tricks like that. Mm-hmm. Good question.
John, what would be
I wish I had more stuff to give you.
What would be your strain for your?
Oh, fruits like that. Persimmon guava is really popular in South America. And that guava I find lends itself to beer very well. But I would probably go with some spices like chocolate and cardamom or cinnamon, cardamom, something along those lines, just to see what's what.
So it's a persimmon cardamom chocolate beer.
Persimmon cardamom would probably work. With the chocolate in there too, maybe a little bit weird.
You gotta balance it out. You gotta get your flavors. It's a big thing, balancing flavors. I think the flaw I see in a lot of people that are doing weird things is they can't get the balances quite right. You can't taste all the things. And this is one of my guidances in competition is it doesn't matter what you threw into the beer. Don't list it unless you can taste it.
Yeah.
So you threw in cinnamon, but it's completely gone. Don't list it. Just list all the other things. We had a beer at Revision last night. They just did a pastry stout with like a excuse my language, shit. I don't see any kids here. Shit ton of blueberries, graham cracker, vanilla, cinnamon, a couple other things. And you can taste all those things in the beer. They're all evident throughout there. It tastes like a blueberry pie is what they were going for. It very much tastes like that because they balanced it out well.
Came with a cupcake.
I came with a cupcake? I did not get the cupcake.
I didn't get the cupcake.
We didn't get the cupcake.
He was actually texting you like, "Did you know the heretic?"
I didn't get a cupcake. I don't know. I think we got disrespected and didn't get the cupcake.
You got this.
Now they did give us each like a case of beer to take with us.
That's true.
Yeah, I'll take that over the cupcake.
Yes. You bring up a very good point though. Is don't when you're entering beers in competition, don't put it on the submission form if you can't taste it,
Right.
because you'll be marked down for it. Yeah.
And don't put something that tastes.
Yeah.
I got marked down for the last one, which is the beer I did. I took the judge's advice. I went with that, but then I added a bunch of coffee. I'm sure the judge for the thirsty group. I put coffee in one. I let it sit for too long. And the judges said, it tastes like there's too much coffee. Well, that was what I was going for. But I didn't put it down on my entry. And I took a beer that took second in the competition 2 years ago, the whole, like overall. And I took 10 last in it with that beer because it was just it tasted the coffee and I didn't label it.
Right.
Oh,
You
yeah,
have
yeah.
to-
That was my
That's another good point is you also got to list the things that,
It's supposed to be in there.
Let's-
Yeah.
let's
And I
say-
wanted that, but
let's say you
They tried it.
use just, roasted malts and it really tastes like coffee. I mean, you could even say, with coffee, doesn't matter. It doesn't, matter what ingredients you use. It's really, a brewing competition and based off of the final beer. And you need to just describe that beer really well in whatever submission you're doing. So it's picking the right category, or if it's got additional things in it, describing what it is they're going to taste. And if you do that, you'll win a lot more.
So I have a question regarding that. So if you want to put like mushroom in a beer, do you have to put down the specific mushroom?
No, not necessarily. I would avoid doing that unless it's something really odd that, it's real, woody, or it's real umami, or it's real, almost like cinnamon, or, different mushrooms have different flavors.
Right.
You could go ahead and specify that. I just, be careful about, I would just describe things the way you taste them versus it doesn't matter how you brew them.
I had a mushroom beer in Toronto a couple of years ago in there, and they stated that there were mushrooms, and I forget which type they were on. It might have been shiitake. And, the beer didn't necessarily taste great with the mushrooms, but you could tell it was beer with mushrooms in it. So got a good score. We didn't recommend that it go on for best to show, but at least, good score. Whereas if you get a beer that doesn't list any mushrooms and you taste mushrooms, then you're thinking, okay,
Something's
a little
wrong.
funky
There's some
going on here.
fungus in this.
Yeah.
There's a fungus among us.
Yeah. Or if they've made, and as we were saying earlier, if they've entered a beer where you're, where they say that this character should be there and you don't taste it, then that's a big takeoff.
You just have to be careful to make sure that
Yeah.
the judges know what the mushrooms taste like corals out of origin.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it doesn't hurt to describe the character that they should be looking for from that ingredient.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Yeah.
We got a quick question.
Yeah.
Specifically, I guess for Jamil, it's as a commercial brewer, do you ever find time to home brew anymore?
No, not really. The thing about commercial brewing, I think if you do it right, is it's home brewing on just a larger scale, and you have a license to sell it. That's the only difference. It's the same thing. What you're all doing and what the biggest commercial brewer is doing is the same thing. Don't disrespect or think less of what you're doing because you don't sell it or you don't do it on giant volumes. You can actually make the greatest beer in the world homebrew. You can make a beer better than a lot of commercial brewers, because you don't have limitations on it. People think, I don't have the big fancy equipment. It's like the big fancy equipment is just kind of a Band-Aid or a crutch to making beer at that scale. It doesn't necessarily make the best beer in the world. It just makes beer on that scale more possible.
but it's also a hindrance out of the same.
Yeah.
Also not getting to play nearly as much.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Well, if I gotta change a recipe by a pound or two, it doesn't cost me $1,000.
Right.
It costs me $2.
Exactly.
You say it's cheaper, that's what I told my wife when I started to brew. I'm like, okay, make it
Yeah, oh,
cheaper.
home brewing.
I'm not more pragmatic.
Home brewing can be really expensive if you do it right. I'm just saying. But the thing about home brewing is you can make the best beer in the world in your home. There's nothing stopping you from that. It's technique and ingredients and all that, but you have access to that at a place like this at BrewChatter. They have everything you need to make the best beer in the world. So it's just a matter of implementing it versus commercially, you brew and it's like, well, I need to make, thousands of gallons of this beer. I need to get it in cans. I need to get to the market. I need to, I need to price it right. All that stuff that's limiting you. It's a real, beast when it comes to that. So, but still, it's the same brewing technique. So I was just like, I'm still a home brewer, always will be a home brewer. It's just,
Now you're
bigger
obsessed with
volume.
sex. Yeah.
I'm obsessed with sex. Yes.
Sex.
Sex. Yeah. Sex. I knew what you meant. It ends up being a real challenge, but it's still brewing. Same thing. So I've recently been trying to get some of my friends, do it. I actually homebrewed with a guy. His very first brew, he bought a brew kit that More Beer donated, and BrewChatter donated the ingredients for it. The Imperial Porter, I think it was. Yeah. And turned out fantastic. Instructions were fantastic. The beer kit was fantastic, and so we brewed that. So I have homebrewed recently.
Kind of like
And I will do more.
you get that one really good shot,
Yeah.
so you got to come back and do it. It's like homebrew, man. You make that one really just freaking awesome beer. It's like I can do this again and again, and you can't stop.
Right. Your beers get better over time. Yes, sir.
Circling back around, what is John's nickname?
Oh,
Hillman.
nobody? Anybody?
I found an article from UK and it says that you're a murderer that had a nickname Gold Digger.
Yeah, that's true. But no, that's not the
I don't know
nickname.
your past life. I don't know.
I'll give you a hint. Montrose.
Roddy?
Oh my God. I rock candy.
Yes.
That's how old I am.
rock candy.
Yep, Jamil gave me that appellation, I don't know, 20 years ago.
Quite a while ago.
Yeah.
He's like rock candy to me. It's hard to
Very
sticky. I'm surprised. I thought that would be an easy trivia question for everybody.
It's a good one. Yeah.
Stuff different.
Yeah. Well, it's probably wrapping up this show.
Yes.
You do another one?
No.
Okay.
I think what we'll do is just drink with everybody and hang out. And if you guys want to ask questions or something like that, feel free to do. Before we go, everybody, all 5,000 of you, I want you, 4,500. Give a scream. 1, 2, 3. There you go.
There you go.
Thank you to all our sponsors. Thank you to Blickman Engineering. Thank you to the fine folks at BrewChatter who think enough of us to bring us up here and
Indeed.
waste
we
their
love you
day.
guys. We
Thank
do.
you.
Thank you.
We love you all. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
Until then, everybody, brew strong.
Brew strong, everyone.